Over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to introduce some recent work that we conducted into decision-making and organisational data maturity in Ireland. And I'll walk you through what we found, why it matters, and what it means for business. And let's start with an undeniable truth. Data and analytics are no longer optional. Organisations that invest in these areas do tend to outperform their competitors, whether it's through identifying new revenue streams, optimising processes, or developing new products and services. And there's a quote here that really resonates for me, which is that embracing analytics is now non-negotiable for business. This is a strong statement, but it's one that's backed by evidence. And recent data from the Dublin Chamber of Commerce highlighted a stark reality with business failures increasing by 54%. Beyond financial performance, data management also has regulatory implications. And data protection laws are not just for large multinationals, they affect businesses of all sizes. And companies that fail to comply with GDPR and other regulations are facing significant fines, with the cost of non-compliance rising. So when you layer onto this the rapid development of AI, which we've been talking about a lot this morning, and again, I'll reiterate that AI is not separate from data and analytics. It's very much an extension of it and part of it. AI thrives on data and its effectiveness and is tied directly to the quality of that data. This means that organisations really do need to understand where they are, understand their own data maturity, and understand and anticipate how AI will help shape their industry. So at iSquared, we wanted to get a clearer picture of how businesses in Ireland are using data at this point in time. So we conducted a survey speaking to over 400 business leaders from across Ireland, across multiple industries. And importantly, we didn't just try and speak to the data leaders, the data experts. We wanted to speak to the organisations as a whole, to be organisation-wide. So we deliberately spoke to a number of different roles and different seniorities. Around about 1/3 of the respondents were also C-level executives. So we wanted to get a picture of where businesses and people thought that their businesses were, but not just from those who were maybe closest to the data. And one of the key questions that we asked people was about the future role of data and analytics in business. And the responses were overwhelmingly clear. Decision-making is at the heart of data's value. And there was a lot of good discussion about that in the panel session just now. Yes, words like efficiency, productivity, competitiveness all come out and are common. But more than anything, the respondents emphasised decision-making, better decision-making. And that reinforces the core belief that we have at iSquared, that data is ultimately about making better decisions. If an organisation is not leveraging data to drive more effective decision-making, it's missing the opportunity. We also asked respondents how important data literacy is to their role. The response? Well, over 85% of people acknowledged that understanding and analysing data was at least somewhat important, but over 60% saying that it was very or extremely important in terms of their roles. And then we explored the advantages. So what do people expect if they're able to improve their approach to data and analytics? So this is, what do they expect from their starting point? So remember, some people are at different places along that journey. And again, while efficiency and productivity are expected outcomes, they're very much table stakes in terms of what you should be seeing. What really did stand out for me was when we looked at this and saw that better decision-making was cited as one of the more important benefits. So we asked organisations to rate their own level of data maturity on a scale of 1 to 10. And the average score here was at 6.9. And here's how that broke down. 12.5% of people are what we would describe as foundational. So little or no, or perhaps at the early stages in terms of understanding how to use data. 2/3 fell into a progressing category. So there's some maturity and practices in terms of what they're doing, but certainly not optimized and not making the most of the opportunity at this point. And less than 1 in 5 would describe themselves as excelling in their data capabilities. Breaking this down further, we looked at a number of key components of data maturities. Organisations that tended to rate themselves well in terms of privacy and security, and they felt confident in a culture around data. But when it came to having a clear strategy or accessibility, that tended to score towards at a slightly lower end. And again, just accessibility came out so many times when we talked about that earlier this morning. When you go beyond that and then also look at the correlations between those components and overall data maturity, the standout was actually data quality, followed by tools and technology and data literacy. And that's really important because those are fundamental building blocks. And again, echoing much of what we've just been talking about, absolutely crucial in terms of ensuring that you're not in a, well, garbage in, garbage out, as we said a number of times already. And for me personally, I've spent much of my career focused on rigor and high standards of data quality. So this very much rings true to me in that respect. Organizations have data, but they struggle to integrate it and to extract value from it. The real challenge is not just having data, but it's about making it usable and ensuring that it leads to meaningful action. From this research, we identified really, there was three key themes that jumped out. One is the first, that 25% of organizations have embedded data to some extent into their decision-making. And I'll add that that's slightly different to those that maybe saw themselves as excelling earlier. It's about whether they're actually using it within their decision-making, because you can be using it within your decision-making, but maybe not to the best, most optimum opportunity. 1 in 3 businesses are stuck and very much hamstrung by inertia. And in those cases, they're aware of data's potential, but unsure as how to move forward or how to get value from it. And again, David talked earlier about when we're talking about AI is difficult. And that's part of the challenge, is to sort of, how do you simplify it? Over 60% struggle with execution, which becomes a real challenge. Facing barriers, whether that is unclear approaches, accessibility again, and outdated tools. So this paints a picture of businesses that recognize the importance of data, but face significant roadblocks in terms of using it effectively. And often these roadblocks stem from one thing, and that's complexity. So our research identified 3 main barriers preventing organizations from making the best use of data. So those areas are data foundations, capabilities, and leadership alignment. So in terms of foundations, organizations do struggle with siloed data, poor quality, governance issues, and it does make it difficult to generate reliable insights in that respect. And then from a capabilities point of view, a lack of skills or outdated tools, again, we'll come back to that literacy point, and insufficient investments in technology prevent businesses from fully leveraging the opportunity. And finally, leadership alignment. And yes, you've got to get those first 2 bits done right. There is a resistance to change in many cases. Return on investment can be unclear. I'll always say, from a return on investment point of view, start small, start trying to demonstrate small improvements, but also don't try and create the most complex models in terms of understanding return on investment. See where and how you can deliver value. And these barriers all contribute to inertia. Many organizations see the value of data, but they just don't know what the next steps are in terms of how to address that. Through our research, we identified 4 organizational segments that are quite distinct based on their data maturity. And they are the powerhouses, accelerators, navigators, and opportunists. Let's start going through these one by one. Firstly, with the powerhouses. These companies are highly mature. They're averaging about 8.7 out of 10. If you remember, the average was 6.9. They tend to be larger organizations. They often will have a data strategy in place, and they're closer to the forefront in terms of data maturity and decision-making. They're often investing heavily in analytics and data, and they are likely to have started a meaningful journey in terms of understanding how they're going to extract value from AI in terms of all of their working practices. However, they still struggle, and some of the challenges that are bigger for them really revolve around accessibility and siloed data, which completely makes it harder to unlock the full potential and value that they could achieve. If we then look at the accelerators, they average 7.5 out of 10. They're still slightly ahead of the curve. They're medium to large businesses, and they understand data's value, but they need clear strategies and tools. They're on a strong trajectory towards data maturity, but they often face gaps in terms of execution. So whether that's in terms of getting that leadership buy-in, staff training, or implementing new tools. So the navigators tend to be Small to medium businesses, they're averaging 6.1 out of 10, and they see some benefits from data, but they lack a strategic focus and any real advanced capabilities. And they often tend to use data in more of an ad hoc sense, without any real structure. And their key challenges is moving from, if you like, an intuition-based approach to decision-making to something that is based on more empirical evidence. Okay, and then that brings us to the opportunists, who are smaller organisations where data is not yet central to decision-making, hence the lower rating of 4. They're organisations that rely on intuition, and data only really plays a minor role for these organisations. The opportunity for them really is to understand what are the practical steps, the practical small steps that they can take that will give them an advantage, without overwhelming what they do at the moment, or their teams or their organisations. And when you look at these 4 categories as a whole, understanding which category your organisation fits into is really important in terms of you understanding how to take those next steps in terms of really realising the benefits that you can see. Because the actions that an opportunist or a navigator need to take to be able to move to the next step are absolutely different from the actions that an accelerator would need to take to become a powerhouse. So it's very important to understand where you are at this point in time, in terms of what you do next. And this brings us all back to our central theme, which is about making better decisions. And our research reinforces the fact that data is not just a tool, it's a strategic asset that informs every level of decision-making. To support organisations in unlocking insight and driving advantage, it's important to first understand the building blocks to deliver. And this returns to the themes that we saw earlier. The foundations are critical, and without these, it doesn't matter how good the tools or the skill sets are. That old adage, which we've heard several times now today, of garbage in, garbage out, very much applies just as much today as it always did, whether we're talking about poor quality CRM data or inherent biases in AI training data sets. And a data strategy is then needed as a plan that will help the business realize the gains from AI and analytics to help execute on the broader strategic plan for the organization. To help organizations navigate these challenges, we've developed a 3-stage framework: uncover, create, and build. So uncover is about helping organizations understand the business-wide needs, identifying the challenges and assessing and understanding which of those needs and challenges will deliver the greatest value to the business and how. And then moving on to the creation phase, which is very much about exploring the art of the possible and ideating around evolutionary solutions. And then we land on the build phase, which is then when a lot of the hard work happens in terms of the business casing and the development of an actionable strategy, which then can then be implemented to deliver the value from data. And at its core, this approach recognizes that you don't need to boil the ocean. The key is identifying quick wins and building momentum, rather than aiming for perfection from day one. To wrap up, there's a few key takeaways that I want to leave you with. Data-driven decision-making provides real measurable value, but only if organizations move beyond awareness and into execution. Strong foundations are critical. Without them, even the best tools won't be able to realize the advantages. And data literacy is a high priority, and leaders must invest in making this a focus for the entire organization. Investments in data analytics and AI must be strategic and mustn't just be a response to the latest trends. And this goes back to the whole idea about purpose. You need to understand what you're trying to do, not which tools that you want to use. And most importantly, the data strategy and those initiatives need to align with the business strategy as a whole in order to be able to deliver on the broader business goals. So as we move forward, the responsibility for embedding data-driven decision-making does not rest solely with the IT or data teams. It's a leadership priority. And leaders must foster a culture where data literacy is valued, where insights are acted upon, and where strategic use of data aligns with business needs. So thank you all very much for your time today. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. And if you are interested to see where you stand in terms of the organisational segments and what the next steps are that you take, we'll be sharing a link to the tool with some personalised reports to follow. So thank you very much.